Hello, and thanks for taking a look at this video. Hopefully it can help you get through that once a year process of reconciling your W-2s. I'm going to start with the key reports, I think, on the payroll side that gives you some figures to look at. And those reports then are going to be found in payroll, and two of them are under payroll reports. One of them is the check history register. I want to make sure that I'm in the correct year, so I've changed the menu so I'm showing my year. In this case, I'm using 2010 sample data. And I would pick, in this case, the first of the year through 12/31 of that year. So what I'm basically doing is I'm asking the system to go through the detailed check-by-check history and give me some totals and details of that check. This could be a very long report, several hundred pages in some cases. So you obviously, or not so obviously, but I wouldn't actually print it. I'm asking for it to print by employee, and I want detail. And I do want employer deductions, and printed checks is a good answer. Now, in this case, since my sample data is somewhat nonsensical because of the way I manipulate things in troubleshooting times, I'm going to blank out those dates. But you would select your date range. I'm going to do a print preview of this. So you would do a print preview or a PDF of that. I would not, like I say, I would not put it on actual paper. Although, I would definitely save. Incidentally, I would save a report like that electronically as a PDF. All right, so this report shows me each employee and every check throughout the year. So here's a January check, a February check, a March check, and so on. So I can really look at details, but critically for reconciliation, I really want to jump ahead to the company totals that this then shows me, which is very nice. It shows me a total from the checks of gross wage, how those wages were broken out by earnings code, but more importantly, it shows me all of the tax withholdings that were on those checks, along with the deductions that were on those checks. Identifying these deduction amounts is very important to your reconciliation because nowhere on your W-2s does gross wage show up. Gross wage is not a concept that the government cares about. They only care about taxable wages. And many times you have cafeteria section 125 deductions that are pre-tax, and so they are backed out of the gross wage for W-2 purposes. Okay, so but that's a nice way to get that information. I will, since I'm here, I'll right away print to a print preview a couple of other reports. Another great report to add more support to what these figures are is the Deduction Register. And again, I'm in the right year. And again, since this is a detailed report based on check date, I do want to make sure I pick my year, calendar year, based on check date. So I'm doing 0101 of the year through 12/31 of that year. And again, in my case, I'm going to blank those out. And I can print it by either employee or by code. You may want to print it both ways. I'm going to print it for this purposes by code. So then I'm getting all of my medical insurance together, all of my dental, and so forth. We'll see what we get here because I'm not even sure that there's much there. Yeah, there's a little something there. Okay, so we've got another, and here again you can see detail by code for every check. And as you look at the bottom, you'll see a code. So for example, this says 313045. Over here from my check history, 313045. So here is the detail of every check that made up that 313045. And I can do that for every deduction. Here's $42 on my dental insurance. Here's $42, so on. So that's a real nice report for troubleshooting and looking at. The third report that I'll share with you is found under periodic processing. That's the quarterly withholding report. And I like to do that report for the fourth quarter then. And I'm going to do all employees. I pick gross wages and I like detail. What this report then shows me is it's a paragraph, 2 paragraphs per person. For one thing, there's a fourth quarter total for each employee, but most importantly, there's a year-to-date total for each employee. So it shows me blow by blow, but notice it shows you the detail of what the taxable wages are. Here out on the margin, you find the gross wage, but again, you'd have to back off the deductions, the pre-tax deductions, because notice that the federal wage is different from the gross wage. And in fact, notice that the Social Security wage is different from the federal wage. So here we have actually, different numbers throughout. Okay, so that's a nice report to have in your pocket so that you can look at. And importantly, on the last page, you get company totals again, and you can compare those company totals. And so, for example, on this particular report, here is the quarterly gross, or in year-to-date. I did all of this in one quarter, so it's year-to-date, quarter-to-date are the same figure, and I can proof those totals. This particular report, the quarterly withholding report, is what I refer to as a holding pot report. It's printing from the employee history holding pots, whereas the check history report and that deduction detail is coming from a separate set of data. It's coming from the actual detail records of every single check. So some things that you can goof up on that is if you pick the wrong date ranges, for example, your figures are going to be off and so forth. So you have to pay attention to the details of dates on these reports that ask for dates. You have to be very careful about that to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. All right, so now I've got these reports available to look at later, and I'm now going to go to my W2 menu. I am not using this video as a training for the process of the W2s. Please refer to my other training videos. I have a couple of training videos on the whole process of preparing W2s. This is more for reconciliation purposes. And so let's say you've already done the extract. So you've processed to the point of extracting your employee data. So now you're at the critical proof reports. Now, I can pick through here, and incidentally, if you're combining companies, as I do recommend, normally when I'm doing proof reports, I do them separately by company. In this case, I just have one company, but if I had multiple companies in my W2 file, I would proof them one company separate from another, because all these other reports are separate by company. So it's really the only sensible way to do it. I'm going to use the number 2 report. And I'm going to print it by number 1 company ID. And again, I'll do a print preview. And so here I have a report showing my W2, what will appear, what wants to appear on the W2s. And here's my 3 columns of wages and 3 columns of corresponding taxes, which incidentally, let me find that's what these are here. 3 columns of wages, 3 columns of taxes. They're really coming. This quarterly withholding report is really the source of where this data came from. And so they should match. Now, there is a relationship between these numbers, and there's a relationship between what shows here and what you might be able to reconcile against this detail from check by check. For example, the Social Security and Medicare wages are going to be the gross wage and then backing out any pre-tax cafeteria plans. So that's where you get to a lower number. So you start with the gross wage and then you subtract out any pre-tax plans. And that's how you would get to this figure here. And there should be a relationship between the Medicare tax and the Medicare wage, because if you take the Medicare wage times 0.0145, that's the percent of tax for Medicare, you come up with this figure. You should be able to prove that. And you should also be able to, on your figures, you should be able to do that math, and that should come out within pennies. If it's off by a few pennies, that's within rounding. Same thing is true of Social Security wage and the Social Security tax. That they are related by a direct percentage, and that factor is 0.062. That's 6.2% tax on the wage. So it's the wage times 0.062, and you come up with that tax. You should be able to prove that. Now, notice the federal wage differs from the Social Security wage, and that's going to be because while retirement plans are subject to Social Security and Medicare tax, they are not subject to federal income tax. So the difference between your Medicare wages and your federal wages should be the amount of your retirement plan. And you may have multiple retirement plans. So those are the relationships you want to prove. The critical thing here is to make sure on the taxes, for example, that if I take a look at my employee Medicare tax, 1897.71, that's a little off here, and I'm not surprised because I fiddle with my data. But that should proof. It's wrong here, but it should proof in your case. The Social Security tax, here's the Social Security tax, 8,098. Here I'm off a few bucks, but they should proof. They should be within pennies. They shouldn't be off by even dollars. So you'll want to check those relationships. The federal tax that was withheld, there is no right or wrong reason. There's no relationship between this wage and this tax. It's a random relationship. So but what's important is that it's the right number that you withheld. And here I do have a match, so I didn't fiddle with that along the way. So that particular number proofs out. But you should be able to make those relationships, see that those proof out, and then you know that you're in very good shape for reporting your W-2s. So you've got detailed reports with every check involved, and then you've got summary reports that show you totals, but you should be able to make the relationships work. So I hope that's helpful for you as you reconcile your W-2s. Thanks for listening.